there. Welcome to the Seesaw Skills PD today. We're glad you're here. My name is Kathy Hurlbert. I am an instructional technology specialist for the district and a longtime Seesaw user. I can't wait to share information with you today about how to use Seesaw Skills to collect data and document student progress. We'll get started with the webinar very soon. Hang tight, and thank you again for joining us. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Seesaw Skills PD. We are very glad that you joined us. We are going to go ahead and get started. So, I am excited to share some information with you today. Let me go ahead and introduce myself. We are going to be looking at, let me hop back there and just be clear about what we're going to look at. We're going to be looking today at using Seesaw Skills to collect data and document student progress. And so this is probably one of the most underutilized features of Seesaw. We've had it for 2 years, but everyone's kind of been trying to wrap their head around just how to use just the basic features of Seesaw. So we're going to dive in today on how to utilize the Seesaw skills within Seesaw and how to attach them to pieces of student work. So in case you didn't hear my Bitmoji intro, my name is Kathy Hurlbert. I'm an instructional technology specialist. I taught first grade for many years here in the district and have used Seesaw with my students for a lot of years. So I'm excited to share the information with you today. And I have with me my co-host today, and I'm going to let Paula introduce herself.
Hi, before I do, Kathy, just letting you know, I made you host, which removed me as co-host. So while I introduce myself, maybe you could add me as a co-host again.
Yes, I can do that.
Because then I won't be able to manage the chat. So Hi, everyone. I am Paola Villalon Perasandi. I, too, am an instructional technology specialist for elementary, and I taught second grade for about 10 years. So very excited to be here and help you all out. I'll be manning the chat, so any questions, I'm going to try and do my best, and if I don't know the answer or if I feel it's something that everyone needs to know, I'll go ahead and ask Kathy to just elaborate a little bit more on it. Oh, and I want to apologize. I'm not crying. I have allergies, so my eyes are just red, so I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. All right, so our learning goals for today's session is we're going to look at how to identify how Seesaw artifacts, meaning things that kids are putting into Seesaw, can be used to gather data about student learning. And we're going to learn to organize our digital student portfolios and also learn how to attach skills to Seesaw activities and then use that data to kind of monitor student performance, and then also we'll learn how to navigate the skills view. So we've got a lot of content packed in there. So before we get started, I want to go over a couple expectations and housekeeping things about today's webinar. So if you hover towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, you're going to see your black Zoom menu bar come up if you don't see it already, depending on what view you're in. There is a chat feature there, and you want to go ahead and click into that chat to open it up and kind of leave that open on the side. If you have questions as I'm talking, go ahead and type them in. If Paula has the answers, she'll probably just reply back to you, but I'll also pause periodically during the presentation to check in with her on questions. You also can go to the reactions button and raise your hand as well if you need additional questions. And then at the end, we'll open up for questions where you can actually unmute yourself. So as you guys are coming in, we have muted everybody. If you want to, you can go ahead and stop your video if you don't want to be on the camera and just listen in with your audio. I do want to mention that a couple things before we get going. If you are not familiar with this, on your Launchpad at the very bottom, you'll find the Teacher Distance Learning page. And this is a really outstanding resource for you right now. So when I hop to the Teacher Distance Learning page, I'm going to land on the main page, but up here in the right, I see another menu, and I'm on the webinar page. So if you go to the webinar page, you're going to find a listing of webinars that we've already done and recorded and put there. So that's a great resource for you. And then the calendar of upcoming webinars. And so you can always click in and check them out. This is updated daily, several times through the day as we're adding new courses. So I just want to make sure that you do know how to get to that. The next thing is for you to receive credit for today's webinar, I am going to have you fill out a very short form. So you can see here, I'll share the link to this form at the end of the presentation. It's very easy. Your name, your campus, was this session helpful, and then what you'd like more info about. I really want to emphasize that part because I'm looking at that info after every class and making some decisions with my team about what do we need to do to support you moving forward. So it could be something you heard in today's webinar, or maybe something you just think would support you with distance learning that you want to learn more about. So make sure, give us some good feedback. We're listening. When you click submit on this form, it's going to take you to a confirmation page. And I want to point this out because the link to the slide deck is right here. So once you fill out that form, you'll click that link and it will give you a copy of today's presentation if you feel the need to go back to it a little bit later. We're also recording this session, and we'll be putting it on that recorded webinar page as well, so you can have that to go back to as well. So I think I covered all the expectations. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get rolling here. So the big concept here is that gathering data through Seesaw allows teachers to better understand where students are at in their learning and applications of concepts if it's used well. And that's really the key thing there. So, you know, you don't really have much of an option a lot of times right now because we're doing distance learning. This is kind of one of the platforms that we're using to deliver student content to them. What I do want to emphasize with you is as you are creating and assigning activities to students, the student voice is really the road to change. So, for example, you know, when I initially started teaching, I would do things like this place value map where I'd have kids match things. And what I was finding when I moved to Seesaw, and this is really the key thing, when I had them record and explain their thinking, that was a huge turning point for me as an educator because I really got to get inside their head and really understand and pinpoint if there was learning gaps. So by listening to their thinking, it was like, wow, like I know what to do now to help this student move forward. So, you know, as you're selecting activities or editing activities, you know, I encourage you to, you know, have them record themselves and explain their thinking, because the true power is being able to hear their thinking. So in using Seesaw, students really should be empowered to demonstrate their learning. Our goal is to move kids towards mastery of concepts, and Seesaw is a great way for us to, you know, find out if they are mastering those concepts, and then also use the tools within it to track growth and mastery. So like anything that we use, it's a tool, and tools are only as good as the hands that create with them. So we want to give you all the resources in your toolkit today so you can go forward and use the platform and the skills feature to really capture a good understanding of your student progress. Paula, are we okay to go ahead and move forward?
Yes, you are. You've answered some of the questions that they've had.
Okay, cool. All right. So again, we've got to make sure we're using this tool wisely. So I want to talk with you a little bit about the learning cycle initially before we jump in. So when we're teaching, we move through an instructional cycle, and you guys do this on a daily basis with students. So the learning happens, the instruction and the learning occurs first. Then we utilize ways to find out, is the student applying the skill or concept? And that's where Seesaw comes in. And then we move to the planning phase where we look at that data and say, you know, what do we do next? So Seesaw really provides a nice vehicle to help us move through this cycle of learning. So we can provide, and we've done several trainings where I've talked about packaging your learning into a Seesaw activity, your instruction with what the students are going to do. And so that will occur here. Then the assessment piece is tied to it in the activity. So we ask kids to demonstrate or apply with that concept. And then we're going to look at that data and decide what to do moving forward to help support that student. So there's a lot out there about Seesaw, but we're going to kind of hone in on how to really make it a smooth digital portfolio to collect student information. So the first thing I want to talk with you about before we jump into the skills feature is the folders feature. So I'm going to hop over to my PD class. So when I land in my PD class on my journal, on my teacher account, this journal is everybody's work all together. So which is great. If I click on a specific student, that is that student's complete journal. So it's all their work in one place. What I want to encourage you to do is to create folders that are going to help you filter down to data that you need to see later. So and we'll walk through that in just a minute, how to do it. But you notice there's a little folder icon to the right of number 11. And when I pull that folder up, I can actually filter down and look at number 11's work in just specific folders. So it really helps you to kind of hone in. Oh, there's Miss Tanner. So kind of hone in on what you're wanting students to look at. So to create folders, that you can do it when you assign activities, and we'll look at that in a second, but also I can come here to my wrench, which is my class settings, and I have a folder section down here. And if I click manage folders, I can create folders here. So you notice I have like an ELAR folder, but I also have more skill specific folders. So like phonics would fall under ELAR. When you put things into folders, you can put them into multiple folders. So maybe I want a general journal with all the students' ELAR stuff, but then I want to be able to drill down to more specific things. And you could even go as, you know, skill specific as phonics, specific phonics patterns. So you can have lots of different folders, but it's going to really help you to drill down and find things later. So I really encourage you to, you know, take advantage of that. Folders are for filtering student work after it's completed. So we can pre-program activities to go to folders when they're done, but there is no foldering option on the activity feed. So I just want to be clear about that. So I did drop a video here. If you get back to your classroom and need some information or a reminder on how to do the folders, you can watch that. So again, today's training is about Seesaw skills. And when I say skills in Seesaw, that is the lingo Seesaw uses for basically what we call in the state of Texas our TEKS. So our TEKS are already in there, and we're going to take a look at how to attach them to activities. Now you do have some options with your skills. And so Seesaw uses a rating system. When we're attaching skills, you can access the skill settings in your wrench by going to class settings and then down to manage skills. So you can see in this picture, this particular class is set to a rating of 4 stars. But I can actually make a change, and I can go anywhere from, I think, 3 stars to 6 stars. You also can click and change the color scheme of the class if you want to. So for me, red, yellow, green works well because, you know, red being they're struggling, green means they're doing well on that skill. But you have some abilities to change that. I would encourage you, before you make changes to your skill settings, to talk with your grade level team, because I think as you're looking at data, maybe at the end of the year or early next year, it's important to, you know, everybody be kind of doing the same thing in that grade level. So again, to make changes, you would go to your wrench, skill settings, it's 3 to 6 stars. And then here are your different color options if you want to make those changes. So anything that goes into a student journal, you can add skills on after the fact. So anytime that you see the graduation cap in Seesaw, that is a symbol that represents skills in Seesaw. So if I have in my class journal something that a student submitted and I forgot to attach skills to it, I can actually click my graduation cap here and I can go ahead and find the skills. So it's going to pull up a menu. So you notice this particular Seesaw class that I'm in right now is a 2nd grade class. So I already see all my 2nd grade TEKS in there. So when I attach skills to a piece of student work, I have to find the skill first, and I can search by TEK number, but I really encourage you to search by keyword. That seems to be the fastest way that I have found, because this menu is super long. You don't want to scroll through that whole thing. So when you're working with skills in Seesaw, there's kind of 2 parts. You attach the skills to an item, and then you rate the skills in the item. So for this student, this work has already been completed, and I've already attached some skills to it. And so now to rate those skills, I'm going to just go ahead and click on how many stars I believe that student should get for that piece of work. I do want to mention that parents and students do not have access to this information. So you only see this on the teacher end, so it's really for you to track data. So that is one way that we can add skills to student work, but we talked about that. I'm all about working smarter, not harder. So Seesaw activities really make using skills so much easier. So we're going to take a look at how to do that today. So we can go to our Seesaw activity library by clicking our plus and going to assign activity. Whoops. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. So hopping into my activity library. Now you may be seeing Seesaw activities on some of your distance learning IPGs, and that's fine. You may be creating your own activities, and that's fine. Or you may be grabbing things from the Seesaw community or the school and district. So just a couple things I want to mention. If you're fairly fresh with Seesaw, the 3 libraries, you have your community library that is everything that is out there that has been created and contributed by Seesaw ambassadors around the globe. Some activities are fantastic, some need a little work. Then you have your school and district library. The school and district are things that have been contributed by people at your campus and or curriculum specialist people. And then you've got your library. Your library is where activities live that you have created, copy and edited, or saved. So I'm going to go back to our community library. The process for adding skills is going to be the same, whether you created the activity or are using an activity that's already here. So we're just going to kind of walk through the entire process together. So let's look at, for maybe an activity. Oh, I did forget to mention something really important. When you land into the community library, there are several different ways to search. So I can click this drop down and select my grade level, which is nice because you have the ability to move up or down. If you have students that are, at the higher end, or maybe students that are struggling, you can go to different grade levels to look for content. You have the all subjects box here, which I'm going to recommend that you do not use. You do not have time for that. So we're going to go ahead and use this search feature instead. And so again, I go very skill specific. So put in exactly what you need. This is probably not as skill specific as I want to search for, but just to walk you through it, I'm going to just search place value. So I'm in the community library, so I'm searching all the activities that are available in 2nd grade in relation to place value. So I'm going to scroll through. I get these little tiny thumbnail views, and I'm going to go ahead and look at one. So I'm going to click it. And if I feel like this is a great activity and I want to use it, I'm going to go ahead and heart it. That's going to move it to my library. So hearting is how you save things and move it to your library. Once you heart it, you can actually come here and copy and edit the activity. And I do want to point this out because when I use Seesaw as a teacher in the classroom, I was physically there with them and I was providing the instruction for them. I was, standing up in front of the class doing my thing and providing that instruction, and the students were using Seesaw to demonstrate their learning after I did that teaching. Well, because of the situation that we find ourselves in now, we really need to package our instruction into the Seesaw activity. So most of the activities that you find in the Seesaw library are going to be, for scenario A, when we were physically there teaching. So I want to encourage you to do that copy and edit and add your own learning into it. If you need some more help with that, I would check out the recorded webinar page. We've done several webinars that really walk you through that process. So just to point out kind of the anatomy of the activity, we've got our activity name, our directions. We can add voice instructions, which I encourage you to use your own voice. And then the multimedia instructions or example, that's where we want to put our teaching. So this particular activity is about place value. So I probably want to add something here that's going to teach the students about place value. So the teaching part goes here, and then the student template is where the students are going to apply it. So again, if you need some more support on that, visit the recorded webinar page and check out, the Beyond the Basics with Seesaw or the clickable learning boards. Those webinars are really focused on, developing packaged learning lessons for students. What we're going to look at today is how to actually attach the TEKS to the activities before we push them to students. So again, that working smarter, not harder. So I'm going to scroll down, and this is a little tricky to get there. I'm going to click more options and then scroll down again. And here's skills way at the bottom. So you can see that I don't have any skills added. So I'm going to go ahead and click skills. And again, here's my search menu. So I'm going to just search by my keyword, and I'm not adding. Yep, I think we're doing that. So I'm going to just go ahead and put a check mark on the skills that I want to attach to this activity. So you can attach up to 5 skills on each activity that you submit to students. If you need to add skills or maybe navigate to skills that are in a different grade level, you can click that new skill and do that as well. So to attach these skills to an activity, I'm going to hit the green check, and now you can see this activity has 2 skills attached to it. So I've gone in, I've packaged my lesson, I've added skills to it. Let's save it and deliver it to students now. So I clicked save at the bottom. You notice because I copy and edited her activity, I am the author now on this particular activity, which is kind of cool for your kids to see when they do them. So to deliver this to students, we're going to do assign and then select the class. If you found an activity in the library and it was already a packaged lesson, maybe something you pulled off the IPG, you don't have to go through the whole, and you feel like it's ready to rock, you can go ahead and go straight to assign, and we can add skills here as well. So I clicked, let me make sure I was clear on that. I selected the class, and then I clicked edit students, folders, and skills. So this is a really important menu that I really want to draw your attention to, because Seesaw activities really offer you an opportunity to differentiate what you're delivering to students. So when I'm assigning activities, I can choose to go ahead and send this to all students, but I can also click that off and send specific activities to specific students. They're only, if my students are logging in at home, they're going to just see the things that are assigned to them. Everyone's not going to see at home what is assigned to Johnny or whatever. So for this example, we're going to leave it on all students. When I click the next tab, which is folders, this is where I have the option to go ahead and pre-program my activity to go into a folder. So a couple things I want to point out. I mentioned a little earlier about being very skill specific. So you can, again, put this in multiple folders. So maybe I want to put this in math, but I also want to put it in place value. And maybe I even want to add a folder right here. So if I didn't have a folder for this yet, I could go ahead and say, I don't know, tens and ones, and pick a color and green check. So that is another way that you can just go pre-program. You don't have, the student doesn't have to do anything. When that work gets approved, it goes automatically to that folder. So I also want to draw your attention to the private teacher folder up here. Now this is a Seesaw for Schools feature that it comes in really nicely. If you're doing work with students on Seesaw that you maybe don't want to go to their journal, maybe you don't want families to see it, it's kind of an assessment item and you're just trying to gather data, you can actually pre-program the activity to go to a private teacher folder. And that folder is where you will only have access to that. So again, that's something that, you know, an option for you if you need it. So in this example, I added my skills when I copy and edited the activity. But again, if it was an activity ready to rock, I could tap skills right there and go ahead and use the same practice to search and add those skills. So we're going to go ahead and click the check. It's going to take us to our activity assigning page. I want to point out you do have the ability to schedule activities. So if I, you know, maybe I'm planning for next week, I can go ahead and program this activity to not show up until Monday or the week after. You can go many, many months ahead. We're going to assign this one immediately today. But once we're ready to kick it out to students or schedule it, we're going to go ahead and click assign. So no thanks, we're not going to share this activity. So we're going to go ahead and hop back to class, and I'm going to pause for a minute because I've given a lot of information and check in with Paula. Paula, any questions have come up?
You've had questions and I've kind of been answering them. One of them was the folders and if there were any subfolders, and we know there isn't. Yeah. The other one was about the grade level skills. They were asking if you searched for the activity under a specific grade level, if that was the skills that you were getting. But I explained that no, it's whatever's up in the wrench, whatever your class is set up as, that's the skills you have access to.
Right. You could, I mean, you could technically, right, Paula, like add skills from other grade levels by typing them in.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you'd have to go in and type them in yourself.
Right.
And, oh, and they were asking also about adding, you know, because I know the teachers have already been posting activities and they're finding the skills are very useful. So they're wanting to go back and add skills to the activity. Awesome. And if that would be applied to all the students, even though they already turned in the work, and they said yes, as long as it's done within the activity and not on the individual child's post.
Right.
Right? Am I right?
Yes.
Just confirming with you.
Yes. The skills should show up. So if your activity is still living in the activity feed, you haven't archived it yet. Once you archive it, I don't think those options are really available anymore. Right?
Yeah, I don't think there are.
Yeah, but say you've got some activities sitting on your feed that you, I'm looking for one that doesn't have any skills. You have an activity sitting on your feed that you had not previously assigned skills to. You'll, under the activity on the lower right of each activity, you have a 3-dot menu. And one of the secrets in Seesaw is anytime you see 3 dots, you've got options available. So I can go ahead and edit the activity right here and go ahead and come down, same process, more options, and go ahead and add those skills on here. So if you have assigned some maybe for next week and you want to go add those tweaks, that is a possibility for you. I also want to mention, because we are doing most of our learning through Seesaw, and especially in the younger grades, your activity feed gets really long. So we really want to keep this clean and concise for kids. So I really recommend the end of the week, before you push out your new activities, to come to your activity feed and click the 3 dots. And you're going to, there's 1 of 2 ways to do it. So this particular activity I just assigned, no students have done it. So I only have the delete activity option. But if I go down to an activity that I've had students do, this one right here, when I click it, my option is not delete, it's archive. So archiving or deleting the activity just moves it off the feed, so students don't have to navigate through it to find things. So archiving is going to move that activity over here. You can always go look at it. It doesn't remove it from your Seesaw library, so you can always get back to it there. It's already saved there, but it just cleans up the feed and makes that a little bit of a cleaner experience for kids. So you want to stay on top of that. I've heard some classes that are like, they can't find the activities for the week because there's so much more. That's, you know, something we need to do on our end to make sure that stays clean. Any other questions before we rock on?
They're asking, when it's archived, are students able to edit that activity still?
So if, that's a good question actually. So in your teacher settings, you have, under students, you have a setting here to enable item editing. So if you have that on, here's what kids can do. If they've done the activity and you've already approved it, they can access their activities on their journal feed, and then they can go to their 3 dots under their work, and they don't have as many options on the student end, but they can go ahead and edit item and then add to it or redo it, whatever you want. Another thing that I want to show you is when students submit work, you have a send back feature. So if a student submits something to Seesaw and you don't feel like it's really good quality work, and I'm going to see if I can make that happen really quick. You have the ability to send it back to students so they can do a little bit more work on it. But once the activity is archived, then it is it's not on the activity feed anymore. So if you want them to go back to it, you probably need to approve the post, maybe leave a comment telling them what they need to do, and so the student can go back to it later. Paula, do you agree on that?
Yes, I agree. And they're asking if you could archive for specific students, and no, right?
No. Well, I actually participated in a Seesaw Ambassador update yesterday, and what they told us was if the students have completed the activities, that they shouldn't see them any longer here on the feed. They may need to do a refresh or exit the app and come back in. They also said if the kids kind of click around to other options and then go back to the activity feed, that those activities should be disappearing as students submit their response and the teacher approves it. Does that make sense?
Especially because they are logging in with their Googles through Launchpad, so that identifies them as the student.
Right.
You also have more questions. So when it's archived, you already explained only if they've begun it, not if they haven't begun it, then it disappears for them, right?
Right.
And
So
then,
it's
yes.
really important to keep them on that timeline before you archive the activities. I wouldn't leave one hanging on there because one kid is not getting on the bus and doing it, but you know, it's that communication piece with the families.
Yes. And then someone's just asking if you could please explain the colors, the stars and colors again, and how does it help the teacher?
Great. So we're going to hop in a minute and look at what it looks like to rate the skills and then how to navigate the skill feature. But I'm going to go to my wrench just to kind of explain a little bit more about that. So I went to my class settings and I'm scrolling down to the skill settings. So on my skill settings, I can manage skills. So if I needed to archive skills, you can. With this particular class, I have the ability to archive those. I don't feel like you will need to do that. So with my skills rating scale, you may feel like 3 to 4 stars is not enough of a range for you to really accurately rate students' work. So that's why the feature is there to go from 3 to 5. So if whatever you set your how many stars to, that's what it's going to look like when you rate the skills and the activities. And we're, again, going to look at that in just a minute. With the color schemes, some people feel like, red and green is, I don't know, too harsh. Again, only the teacher sees this. I'm not super concerned about it. This works for me, but you can choose to go with different color schemes if you want. And those color schemes, when we move to skills view in a little bit, you're going to see why those color schemes are important and stand out. Did that help? Paula?
I think so. They haven't said yes or no, but I think it did.
Okay. All right. So this activity right now, I just pushed out. You can see here that I've got skills attached to it, but nobody has done the activity yet. So I want to show you what it looks like to actually rate a student's work that's come in that they've done an activity on. So I'm looking for, hopefully I didn't archive it. I think I actually approved it the other day when we were learning. So I can see here that this work, this particular activity that I delivered to students actually has skills attached to it. So as students are doing their work, you get that little red ribbon at the bar, and you can go in and approve and rate the skills by clicking the graduation cap under it. But if I come back to my activity feed, I give the kids a couple days to work on it, and I want to look at everybody's identifying coins work in one place. This is probably the more efficient way to look at student work. So I'm going to click the title, and it's going to bring up the menu for just that lesson. And now I can actually click and toggle through to look at each student's work in this area. So I'm going to tap into number 11 so we can take a look at their work. So as the teacher, I'm going to go ahead and look at this specific student's work. And I think I've already skilled this student, but I can use this little toggle on the right to look at both pages. I can go ahead and use my features down here at the bottom to like and comment on their skill, on their work. And again, I can do an audio comment, which is helpful for littles. I have this little blue, it's a call out box with the T in it. That allows me to leave private teacher comments that again are just for my information. And then the skills are here. So I apologize. I think I approved all the skills the other day when I was doing the last training. So I'm going to go ahead and do an add response on one so you can see what that scoring process looks like for the teacher end with the stars in there. So I have an activity, an assignment coming in right now. And anything that we haven't, that we have questions on while that's processing?
No questions so far.
Okay. All right, so I just went in and did a post for this particular activity. We're getting like some crazy.
Yes. I'm checking, but it looks like everyone's new, so I don't know why that.
Okay. All right, well, we'll push on and hopefully get that resolved. So I just submitted this activity, so I have not rated it yet. So if you haven't gone in and approved the skills, I want you to see what that looks like. So again, I went to the activity, I clicked on the name. I'm going to go ahead and open up the student's work. And you can see underneath, it should have the skills here underneath, and I can go ahead and just mark how I want to rate them. So again, 1 star means they're really struggling with that concept, and 5 stars means that they're solid. So again, you have some leeway on that rating system if you want to do 1 to 5, and you have leeway on the color system if you want to do, you know, which color scheme you want to use. But I just attach the skills, I just rate the skills that way. So again, you attach the skills when you assign the activity, and then you rate the skills when the activity comes in. I did do this activity as a teacher on my iPad because I was under pressure and doing it really quick. But normally when you open the student's work, you're going to see the star rating system sitting right here under the work. So you really don't even have to click the graduation cap. You would start right here on this platform. And then to toggle to the next student's work, I use this little arrow on the side, and that will take me student to student. And I just go ahead and rate their progress on that particular piece of work. So we're going to hop over to talk about why that skill, how to navigate the skills and see student progress now. So we've assigned activities with skills attached. We've rated the work as students are submitting it. Skills view, again, just like like I showed you under journal posts, the symbol for it in Seesaw is the little graduation cap. So when I hop to my graduation cap, it's going to take me to a new view. This is my skills view in Seesaw. And so my initial skills view, you're going to see all the skills up top that I have assigned and attached to activities. So these are skills that I've been trying to teach and assess using Seesaw activities. So when I land here, this is a very general menu. So I've got all my skills up here, and I've got all my students on the left. So I see these little boxes with numbers, and I want to kind of explain a little bit about those. So the gray boxes with the number 0 means that I have I have not assigned an activity with the skill attached to it to that particular student. Or if I have a number in it in a gray box, that means that I have assigned an activity with a skill attached to it, but the student has not completed it. So that's, hopefully that makes it a little bit clear. So this is where you really get to see where those color schemes come into hand. So I can take a look at my students overall. So this is kind of, like I said, general. This is all the skills together, but I can go ahead and drill down even further. So I can come down to category, and I can filter down to a specific skill area and scroll through and see how my class is doing. I can also do, let's take that off. I can also drill down by subject. I feel like that's a little general. I don't do that a lot, but I can also navigate and drill down by student. So if I just want to pull up one student in the class and look at just their data, that's really helpful. So this shows me how the student is performing across different TEKs in the classroom. So the category field, and I can also go to the skills view and pull up a skills view of how I'm doing, which could be really insightful as a teacher to give you some data on your whole class, to give you an understanding like, okay, most of my class have got this, or I really need to do some more reteaching on it. So there's lots of different ways to kind of filter down to get information once you have work coming in and you're filtering. You also do have the option down at the very bottom right to export this data. So when you do export it, it comes out in a Excel spreadsheet, and then you can have, you know, play with it to your heart's content, filter it, sort it, however you want to, you know, manipulate that data. So really good information. Paula, I see our chat box blinking. Do we have any questions up to that point?
You already answered one of them. They were asking about how can you export a report for them, and you just explained it that yes, you can. They're just asking again about the difference between the color, the number. What if a student didn't do it? Like what shows up for them?
So if the student didn't do, like this student, the teacher student here that has a 0, I have not assigned any activities with skills attached to it. This student right here, I'm sorry, they have not completed any activities that have skills attached to it. This student below has an activity that they completed, but I failed to rate it as a teacher. So if I rated, the one tells me they have an activity that has skills attached, but I have not, because it's gray and I don't see a color, that tells me I haven't rated that skill. I don't think we were able to do this on the PD account, but if I hop over to my old class and come to skills view, we found that we were able to navigate to those items. So this student had one thing that had skills attached, but I had failed to rate it. So I can go to those, to that student post now and go ahead and rate the skill for the student. So you can see I clicked her, she has no stars there. I can go ahead and rate her. And then let's go back to her skill view and see how that changed her green. So we'll go back to skills view. And now you can see it changed her colors to green. Does that help clarify, or am I not understanding the question?
That is answering the question. They haven't said if it clarifies or not.
Okay. All right.
Yes, they said yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
They have one more question. It says, so if one skill is mastered and another skill is not, what happens? Could you explain that?
It's basically just information for you. So you can attach, like I said, up to 5 skills. Are they going to be green on all those skills? No, they may be, 5 stars on one of the skills attached to that, 2 stars. It's data for you as a teacher. So this would be where I would go and look and say, okay, these are areas that I need to reteach on. Those yellows, those reds, that's an indicator to me that, hey, I need to keep looping back to these skills and give the student more support. You notice, like with this particular student where has 3 items, which is a really nice feature too. So what that means is I can attach a skill to multiple activities. So maybe I teach I deliver the activity with the lesson to a student on a skill. I rate that skill. They were like 1, 2 stars. I create another activity where I reteach it and then attach that same skill. I can go in and rate them again. So it gives me really a nice opportunity to reteach, and the color will change as I rate them on each additional item. So initially it would be red with 1 star. Maybe the 3rd time that I delivered the activity, they finally got it. I would rate it at 5 stars, and that block would turn to green. Anything else you can think of?
They still want clarification, so they're just wanting to make sure. So it says, so it will show they have an assignment, but if it's not done, it stays gray.
No. Okay, so the number is representative of the student not doing the activity. Does that make sense? The color is representative of me not scoring the activity. So this box right here is gray, and it's got a number 2. So that tells me the student has done 2 activities that have skills attached, this particular skill attached, but I have not gone in and rated it. Whereas this activity above it, I have not assigned an activity with that skill to that student. So the number tells me how many artifacts that student has done with skills attached, and the color tells me whether or not I have gone in as a teacher and rated it. Better?
They are saying, I can't score if they didn't do it. Exactly. You can't score it if they didn't do it either. So
that's a good point, and that's a real struggle right now with distance learning, because it's probably some kids are getting on and doing things and some kids probably aren't. So definitely an important factor. And I think, like I said, this has really been an untouched feature up to this point, and I feel like having this knowledge now and starting at the beginning of the year next year, this is going to be a really powerful tool for you next year. Any other questions?
And they're just asking, and the report will show it. Well, it won't show that they've mastered it or not because you haven't been able to grade it, correct?
Right. It would show basically that if the student hadn't done anything, hadn't done the work, it would show kind of like similar to what you're seeing here, like 0 contributions with skills attached. So Excel is not my favorite tool at all. It's really, you know, tiny print and tables and all that good stuff. But if you're savvy with, you know, Excel, you can use the data tool to filter down to information. So you can create filter views by, you know, coming and using the drop-down box and selecting, hey, just show me the students who only have 1 star, or just show me the students that are 5 stars. You can, you know, sort the data in different ways. So it's and look at that, it tells me right there, I have unrated items. So that's really nice to know too. So I don't think it comes in super beautifully when you export it. But if you've got, you know, some skill set here, you can filter it down and really just have some nice data to take into, you know, RTI or whatever you need to do with that data. Other questions?
No, they're just asking if that would be the only way for it to print the report.
Unfortunately, at this point, that is the only way. Paula, I don't know if you have any other suggestions. If you,
No, well, they're asking if they can print the pretty Seesaw grid, and the only thing I can think of is just making a screen capture of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of anything. And really, I mean, it's really not, I heard you say the word grades, and I just want to be clear. It's really not about grading. It's really about assessing mastery of concepts. Do you agree with that?
Yes, yes. And also, I know that in RTI, you have to, you kind of have to see where the student is compared to the rest of the class. And this really gives you a nice visual of where they are also compared to the rest of the class.
Definitely, especially if you're doing, you know, multiple reteaches. Like this student right here, you know, I've retaught this item 6 times and they're just not making progress. And they look at everybody else in that particular column and they're greens, you know, it's very telling what's going on with students if you're using the tool, you know, as it was intended to use.
Yes, and perhaps we can't use it now because we don't know if the parents are helping their child at home, but you moving forward next school year, you know, once you've gotten used to using the skills and how to manage it, this will be really great documentation for you.
And I would definitely, even though, you know, it's not 100% utilizing Seesaw, now is the ideal time to get in there and start attaching skills and rating it. So you get in the flow and you're comfortable with how to use it, how to go and navigate skills feature when you're done. And I feel like it's a very powerful tool for me as a teacher to be able to look and see like, hey, I did a pretty good job teaching this skill. Everybody demonstrated, you know, understanding, or hey, I really need to look at how I'm providing instruction on this skill and modify what I'm doing to move forward. All right, anything else popping up before we get on to the finish up?
No, not that I see.
Okay. So again, you know, now is a good time to jump in. These filtering options are fantastic to help you to really drill down. I love the student view, being able to filter down to 1 student so I can really kind of get a good feel of how that student is doing across the board. And also I can filter down, I believe, by multiple, so student and content area, and that will give me that student specific information. So I don't have to use just one of these sorting categories. I can use several of them. So just show me the student's number, this student's number in operations work, or vice versa. So hopefully, you know, that helps. We talked a little bit about this information. I'm going to share the slide deck with you so you have it to go back to. And then I think we covered most of the important stuff. So again, you can add activities to collections. We covered that in a couple of our other trainings. Those are collections. I encourage you to really copy and edit, especially with distance learning. The students really need to hear your voice in the instruction. So when you make a copy of an activity and edit it, you can add your voice and your recording and your lesson into an activity that's already been developed. When you get the slide deck, there are some links in here. So on this particular page down at the bottom, I linked it really big. There is a link to a document that will show you how to add and edit activities, and it will give you all the activity shortcuts. So actually, I'm going to pull it up to share with you real quick. So there it is. So when you are creating activities, if you're not familiar with this yet, as I'm writing my directions in the activities, there are special ways that I can write particular words. So I get little icons from Seesaw instead of just the words. So if I want the students to use the text label, if I type the word label with colons around it, when I publish the activity, it's going to change that word into the symbols. So this resource is linked for you in on that page, and also gives you some information for editing activities. Let's see what else. Oh, sharing with other teachers. That's a really good one we didn't mention. When you're in your activity library, you can actually share activities with other teachers in a couple different ways. So if I have an activity, and it's all about dividing and conquering right now, maybe I created an activity, I tied a lesson to it, and I want to share it with my team. I'm going to come down to my 3 dots and click down at the bottom is share, and my little toolbar keeps getting in the way. And when I come to the share button, there's a couple ways that I can share. So you probably won't see the Seesaw library. That is for Seesaw ambassadors, but I can go ahead and share to school and district libraries. So this feature gives me the ability to move it for my team into that school and district library. So if I click that, I'm going to tell it which grade level this is for, what subject, and then you should have your school here. So that is a good way to share activities with your team. I will tell you the email to teachers, I've had 0 success with that because we're using Google accounts, but we're using Outlook for email. It doesn't seem to work. So the other way, I either share to school and district libraries or get activity link and then drop those links on the lesson plan or email them to my team, whichever I want. So those are kind of the two different ways that you can share activities with your team. We talked about assigning. There's lots of tutorials to walk you back through this if you need it when we're done. Students, of course, go to the light bulb when they log in to do their activities and click the add response. From what we've been told, those activities should move off the feed once they're done. And then the rest of these things I think I covered with you. So here's a good example. Like I had mentioned, this is a student work, and I went to the activity, clicked the name of the activity, and it opened up this view for me. So this is what it would look like on the teacher end. I would click for how many stars on each TEK, and then use this arrow to toggle to the next student. And anything that goes into Seesaw, you have these tools available for you. You can change the folder, add the skills, private teacher comment, and comments. And then we navigated through skills view. So you guys hopefully got some good information. I'm going to go ahead and grab the attendance form link and drop it in the chat. And you will need to fill that out to get attendance for today's training. You probably are going to, whoops, I did it again. You probably are going to need to copy and paste the link. The live links are not working in Zoom for some reason, but if you copy and paste that link, it should, sorry, Pal, I sent that to you. You should be able to open it up in a new tab, sorry. All right. And otherwise, I hope this was a helpful session for you. Again, you will see the link to the slide deck on the, after you fill out the Google form, you'll just click the link and it'll open into your, open in your drive and you can save it. But you remember, you also have your instructional technology specialist on your campus. If you need more information, we are all more than willing and able to help you. And once you fill out the form, if you're good to go, you can go ahead and leave the meeting, but we will hang out for a few minutes. So Now is the time if you have questions, you're free to unmute yourself and ask away.